Number 10. Luis Fernando Pozzo. In October of 2019, during a national parade in Spain, a parachutist crashed into a lamppost and was stuck for several minutes. Corporal Luis Fernando Pozzo was an experienced paratrooper who, throughout his career, had performed more than 600 jumps. As he was attempting to land, a sudden gust of wind pushed him into the street lamp. After the initial collision, Pozzo remained suspended in his parachute until he was rescued by a military vehicle. Luckily, the crash didn't leave him with any serious injuries. In the incident's aftermath, the King of Spain, who was present at the parade in military attire, offered Pozzo a few words of comfort. Number 9. Paratrooper in Sri Lanka. During a military training exercise in Sri Lanka, a parachutist survived a collision with power lines. The woman, whose name wasn't released, careened towards the high-voltage cables. Unable to change her direction, a flash of light emerged. As she made contact, and terrified onlookers heard a loud explosion. Even though she sustained an electric shock, the paratrooper still managed to free herself from the tangled parachute. She fell to the ground and bystanders rushed to her aid. The woman had only sustained minor burn injuries. Hers wasn't the only jump that hadn't gone according to plan during the training exercise. A second parachutist was reportedly left with a broken ankle following a bad landing. Number 8. Base jumper in Turkey. In May of 2014, a man participating in the Pro Base World Cup was left dangling from one of the tallest buildings in Turkey. The competition, which featured a tour of global events, had reached its Istanbul leg. The base jumper's name wasn't released, but he was described as one of the extreme sports' top athletes. He leapt from the top of the 54-story Sapphire of Istanbul. The jumper had released his parachute, but it got caught on the side of the building. The man was quite literally hanging by a thread. As firefighters quickly put together a rescue plan, they used the window cleaner's cage to reach the athlete and then safely lowered him to the ground. He was extremely fortunate not to have sustained critical injuries in the collision, but also that his parachute hadn't become detached as he dangled hundreds of feet above street level. Number 7. Johannes Grasser. In January of 2020, Austrian parachutist Johannes Grasser was rescued after getting stuck on the side of a mountain in Thailand. The 28-year-old had only the threads of his parachute to keep him from a deadly drop. Grasser and his girlfriend had gone to the peak of Khao Ak Talun mountain in Patalong. Grasser jumped first, but the canopy of his parachute got caught on some jagged rocks. In the collision that followed, the man injured his legs and was left on the side of the mountain, hundreds of feet from the ground for over an hour. From above, his girlfriend relayed information from rescuers via a translator. The authorities were concerned that Grasser wouldn't be able to hold on for too long, and a helicopter was contacted as a backup in case rescuers had trouble reaching him. Emergency climbers eventually arrived at Grasser's position and connected him to a rope and harness, through which he was lowered to the ground. Number 6. Parachutist stuck on landing gear. In October of 2020, an amateur skydiver and her instructor were stuck for several minutes on the landing gear of a plane. They tandem jumped out of the single-engine aircraft as it was flying thousands of feet above the ground. Within moments, a strap of their equipment got stuck on a piece of protruding metal from the plane's landing gear. The two were left helplessly dangling upside down. In spite of the dangerous circumstances, the instructor managed to remain remarkably calm. He even took a selfie with the underside of the plane in the background. After spending a few minutes in this position, the instructor was able to use a tool and release the strap from where it had gotten stuck. The pair then began to freefall and breathed a sigh of relief as the instructor successfully deployed the parachute. Number 5. John Steele. During World War II, the night before the Allies landed on the beaches of Normandy, paratroopers were deployed in waves at strategic locations in the French countryside. Due to an error, John Steele and several others of the US Army's 82nd Airborne Division headed directly towards the village of Sainte-Mère-Église. The village was at the time a German garrison, and it had just been struck by an air raid. During the fighting, a stray incendiary bomb had set fire to a house near the town square. This meant that it was well lit and filled with German soldiers as the paratroopers were descending. They became easy targets, and Steele was among the few not to have been gunned down. Instead, he was wounded in the foot by flak fire, and his parachute was caught in a pinnacle of the village church. for over 2 hours. Steele pretended to be dead as he helplessly hung from the side of the building. He was eventually captured by German soldiers and taken prisoner. Only a few hours later, Steele would escape and rejoin his division after a US Airborne Infantry Regiment took control of the village. Sainte-Mère-Église thus became the first village to be liberated by the US Army during the Battle of Normandy. Steele was subsequently awarded a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Number 4. Hussein Ilhan. In February of 2019, a horrific parachuting accident took place in northern Turkey. Instructor Hussein Ilhan was attached to first-time jumper Evan Salchi. They'd leapt out of the aircraft and hadn't encountered any difficulty during their descent. That's until an unexpected gust of wind pushed them towards a cable car line. The parachute's cords became entangled in the cable, leaving the pair to dangle high above city streets. Before they could be rescued, however, a passing car cut the cords and sent them plummeting towards the ground. It's believed that Ilhan, who was pronounced dead, had broken Salchi's fall. The latter was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Number 3. Abby Lacey. Nebraska woman Abby Lacey spent several hours 70 feet up a tree after she'd crashed into it during her first solo skydive. Lacey had deployed her parachute and an instructor on the ground was guiding her via radio. At one point, she lost communication and panicked upon seeing the rapidly approaching tree line. She braked and went down, crashing into a tree. Omaha rescue crews arrived at the scene but had trouble reaching Lacey. They couldn't get their tall ladders through the intertwining branches and had to use chainsaws to cut a path. Overhead power lines were also turned off so that they wouldn't hinder the rescue effort. Lacey spent roughly 3 hours stuck in the tree. After the first hour and a half, her limbs started to go numb and she was feeling lightheaded. The woman also worried because she could feel the parachute's cords starting to slip. Rescuers eventually got to Lacey and cut her free from the tangled parachute. The woman had suffered some cuts and bruises as well as nerve damage to her right leg. Still, doctors assured her that she'd be making a full recovery. Today's topic was requested by Arato Senpai. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Scott Frankson. During a jump gone wrong in Arizona, base jumper Scott Frankson was stranded hundreds of feet above ground. The man had leapt from a canyon edge that was part of Superstition Mountains. About 300 feet into the drop, he got stuck on a vertical wall after his parachute got hooked into a crevice. His predicament prompted a daring rescue operation. The emergency response team was concerned as Frankson was about 1,000 feet from the bottom. Should his parachute have slipped, he faced a potentially fatal drop. A trooper was lowered approximately 260 feet from a helicopter, and he secured Frankson with a capture strap. He then cut the risers from Frankson's parachute, and the men were lifted to safety. Before we move on, official They Will Kill You merchandise is now available at theywillkillyou.com. It's out of this world. Number 1. Walter Osipoff. On May the 15th of 1941, one of the most daring rescues in aeronautical history took place high above San Diego, California. U.S. Marine Lieutenant Walter S. Osipoff was training a group of novice military parachutists. They were aboard an R-2D1 military transport aircraft, piloted by Captain Harold Johnson, and the exercise involved parachuting the men as well as materials over a drop zone. After the men and materials had successfully exited the aircraft, it was Osipoff's turn to jump. As he threw one of the last equipment bags out of the transport, the cord of his parachute was accidentally deployed. The jump master was yanked out of the hatchway and into the 110-mile-per-hour airstream. The lines of Osipoff's parachute then got caught in the R-2D1's tailwheel. The lieutenant was being dragged through the air and the aircraft's crew couldn't reel him back in. There was no radio equipment aboard, so all Johnson could do was take the plane within a few hundred feet of the ground, hoping that someone would react to Osipoff's plight. A U.S. Navy SOC-1 Seagull, piloted by William Lowry with John McCants in the rear cockpit, promptly took to the air and then closed in, trailing the R-2D1. By that point, Osipoff's chest straps had snapped, while his leg straps had slipped and were wrapped around his ankles. The pilots used hand gestures to communicate and headed towards the ocean, where the air was smoother. As the two aircrafts once again got dangerously close, McCants reached out from the SOC-1's rear cockpit and grabbed Ossipoff. The problem was that he struggled to hold on to him and cut his lines at the same time. Miraculously, the SOC-1 then struck bumpier air and jumped forward a few feet. In doing so, its propeller severed Ossipoff's lines. Once freed, McCants pulled the parachutist into the SOC-1, but another issue quickly arose. The discarded parachute and lines were draped over the rescued plane's rudder. Fortunately, Lowry was equal to the task, and the aircraft ultimately landed safely. The rescuers were awarded the Navy's Distinguished Flying Cross, while Ossipoff, after a 6-month recovery, returned to parachuting. Thanks for watching. Would you rather spend 24 hours trapped in an elevator or up a tree? Let us know in the comments section below.